Welcome to this presentation and demonstration introducing Focal Point in the context of portfolio management. Focal Point is a very flexible web-based application which is used to automate processes around portfolio and product management. It's very flexible, it's very configurable, and it's very easy to adapt Focal Point to suit your processes and workflow, so it doesn't impose a certain way of working on you. It also connects into the other parts of the IBM Rational ALM tooling platform to help connect strategic planning through to delivery. In this demonstration, we're going to throw focus on three scenarios. The first is portfolio monitoring and reporting. In this scenario, we're going to look at how we can use dashboards in Focal Point to understand where our portfolio is at, and then we're going to look at how we can use capabilities to understand the status of key initiatives and to make sure that we are alerted when things are potentially going wrong. When you log into Focal Point, you get to see a set of data and views that are tailored to your role within the process. The way that I've got Focal Point set up here is to provide a set of screens that help me as a portfolio manager monitor and track where the portfolio is at. You can see in the top left hand corner that I've split my portfolio down into three different domains, and these are like containers, so all of the projects and initiatives that are part of these portfolio domains are feeding information in order to determine the health from different perspectives. You can also see that we can monitor portfolio financials, and we can see how our actuals compare to our estimates from the perspective of costs and benefits. We can see how those are changing over time, so there's some trend analysis within Focal Point. I can also on the dashboards highlight things that are potentially going astray or that have already gone astray. So as a portfolio manager, I can drill down into initiatives that need my attention to make sure, in this case, that the project or program manager has got a plan in place to bring the thing back on track. I can also consolidate a lot of disparate information that's related to the portfolio, and a really good example of this is risks, assumptions, issues and dependencies. If I've got them centrally within Focal Point, I link them to my portfolios, to my projects. I can begin to monitor the most important ones based on probability and impact. I can also define a number of objectives that the portfolio is going to be governed against, and I can weight the importance of those objectives. And by aligning my projects to those objectives, I can begin to ask myself, am I really putting my money where my mouth is? So as an example, I'm saying that innovation is the most important objective. It's 41% of the overall weighting. But at the moment, all of the projects that are aligning to that objective are not delivering a significant amount of net present value, and they're costing a lot. So maybe what I want to do is to look at the pipeline of things that are going to help me to innovate and look at ways that we can promote those and get those into the pipeline faster. As a portfolio manager, I can also get much better visibility of where all of these initiatives are within the pipeline. So these are things that are both in flight as well as ideas that are more embryonic. As you might expect, there's some demand management capability within Focal Point. So there's a standard intake process, a structured way to capture new demand and to move it through a collaborative decision process. And I've got some numbers and some statistics here looking at how many initiatives are at each stage within the portfolio. I can drill down into this, and if we look at these 19 initiatives that have reached a stage in the process where they're ready for prioritization, so they're ready to be aligned up against other initiatives. Looking at this list here, the chances are that we're not going to have enough funding to do everything in this list. Some of those things are going to be more risky, some are going to have more benefits projections. The next part of the demonstration, we're going to be looking at ways that we can use Focal Point to help focus on the things that are of real value. Okay, so this part of the demonstration we're going to be introducing 3 different techniques to help build priority lists, and then we're going to be looking at some of the ways that Focal Point can help to visualize priorities and support decision making. Okay, so we're going to start off with one technique which is perhaps the most subjective, which is called pairwise comparisons. And this is really great early on in the process where you don't have a lot of known quantitative data. What it enables us to do is to line up a set of initiatives side by side and get input from our stakeholders. So given the choice between promoting an initiative to develop an out-of-bank money transfer capability compared to an initiative that's going to help to consolidate our check processing systems, which of these 2 initiatives do we think is going to provide the most value to our business? So stakeholders get to vote by comparing relatively which one of those initiatives is going to contribute the most to the business. And the tool walks you through a structured process to compare these things side by side in order to build up a rank-ordered list of initiatives. The second technique is a scorecard, which is configurable, and in this case the scorecard is being used to align how our initiatives score against each of the strategic objectives that we saw previously. By putting some categories in place and putting some numbers against those, we can begin to add up those numbers in order to quantify the total score for each of these initiatives according to our strategic objectives as a total. The third technique is where we use known quantitative data from the business case. So this is information about the potential costs and the potential benefits in order to use that as input for prioritization. One of the challenges that we have around this is that when we look further into the future, some of the projections about those costs and about those benefits have a certain amount of uncertainty. So in this quarter, in Q1 2011, now how sure are we that development costs will be 36,000? Potentially they might be 20% more. On a good day they might be 10% less. And there's an ability within Focal Point to help measure some of that uncertainty, and we do that by looking at the potential worst case and best case scenarios for each of the cost and benefit streams. And there's a Monte Carlo simulation that takes those inputs and helps us work out the 10, 50 and 90% confidence values around achieving the measures from the business case. And what this enables us to do is to understand what level of risk do we want to take on board when we're making investment decisions. So those were the 3 techniques that are used to build up priority lists. What I'm going to do now is to look at some of the ways that Focal Point can help bring those different perspectives together in order to guide decision making. So this is an example of one of the visualizations that is used to support decision making. Over in the top right hand corner we've got a number of the criteria that are typically used to build up priority lists. We've got strategic alignment, we've got the benefits from the business case, we've got the cost and the risk. And the main part of the screen here is presenting a rank ordered list of those initiatives based on how aligned they are to the strategy. I can begin to combine in some additional information, in this case from the business case about the financial benefits. And you can see that the rank ordered list now changes based on those 2 different measures, and cloud readiness as an example has slipped down because the benefits from the business case are a lot less than some of the other initiatives. I might get some input from a subject matter expert around the feasibility, and I might even poll the executives to understand the business value of the things that we're creating. And all of a sudden we're building up a value driven picture of all of the things that we could potentially be doing in the organization. At this stage, you might want to take some of the constraints into account, such as how much money we've got and what level of risk we want to expose ourselves to. And the way to read the chart now is to look at these black pincers which are trailing off from right to left, representing the net of all of the costs taken away from the benefits. And I can begin now to use focal point to support some of the decision making. So a typical scenario might be if all of these things are what we're considering for 2013. If our budget suddenly gets cut by 30%, then which of these initiatives might I need to park for 2014 in order to get below that clip level? So if I deselect some of these bottom initiatives, we can see that the expenses, the total cost of all of these initiatives, falls by 34%. At the same time, we're reducing our overall risk exposure by 68%, and we're still maintaining 67% of all of the financial benefits that we're projecting. So it's putting numbers against some of these measures in order to guide some of the decision making. We can also take into account things like the different scenarios of, well, if the business changes direction and we become much more risk adverse, if we change the weighting of risk as one of our criteria, then how does that impact on the potential list of initiatives? And you can see that as I'm adjusting the weighting of these criteria, then the rank ordered list is changing in the background. So what I've taken you through are 3 different ways of building up priority lists, and the next part of the demonstration is going to be focusing on some of the ways that we can plan for delivery. In this part of the demonstration, we're going to be looking at how we can build up an accurate picture of the scope. We can capture dependencies between initiatives, and we can put together a visual roadmap where we can look to schedule a delivery plan within the constraints that we've got. Okay, so when we pre-plan a project, one of the things that we might do is sit down with the stakeholder and agree what high-level capabilities the project would be delivering. So these are things that are recognized by the business, and the advantage of doing this is that if we split the project down into bite-sized chunks, then if we encounter problems within delivery or if new things come in, it becomes much easier to deliver incremental value to the business rather than holding a number of capabilities at ransom because we identify problems in other areas. We might also capture some of the resource demands for the initiative. So these are the broad brush categories of roughly how many developers do we need to deliver this, or how many designers, or how many project managers, how many hours of these people's time, how many people do we need on a month-by-month basis. We can capture that within focal points. We can capture our supply models, different resource pools, and then what we can begin to do is bring those different pictures together in order to plan for delivery. So what you can see here is a visual roadmap of a list of the initiatives that we've got, some of which are already in flight, as well as things that are more embryonic. We've got some dates against each of these initiatives in terms of target start dates, target delivery dates, and then the histogram at the bottom of the screen is representing the demand and the supply capacity. So the red line here is the supply constraint for a given set of resources, and the blue histogram represents the aggregate of all of the demand for those resources from the projects in the list above. And as a resource manager, what I can begin to do is look to sequence these things in such a way as delivering within those constraints. Or if we've got a bottleneck, then how do we manage to bring additional resources into play? Okay, so we've looked at some of the ways that we can identify progress through portfolio monitoring and reporting. We then moved on to look at some of the different techniques to build priority lists and support decision making, and we finally looked at some of the ways that we can plan for delivery by taking into account the constraints in terms of resources and splitting the project into bite-sized chunks.